Finding a good movie on Netflix these days is a bit like looking for an attractive woman in a Scottish nightclub. You know they exist in theory, but fuck me, they're not easy to find. And for every extraction, which offers simple, unpretentious action that turns out to be way better than it has any right to be, there's an Old Guard, which starts out with such promise, only to devolve into a boring, cheesy slog, ham-fistedly directed, poorly written, and basically amounting to 2 hours of pointless background noise. The movie centres on a group of mercenaries led by Andy, played by Charlize Theron. What the fuck is this weird trend of having female characters with male names? I mean, you're not breaking any glass ceilings with this one, you dicks. Anyway, Andy and her team have fought in war zones all across the world, taking on jobs that are too dangerous for anyone else. They're basically up for anything, just like Tatiana. And they only have one golden rule: they never work for the same employer twice. A rule which Andy immediately breaks so they can rescue a bunch of African schoolgirls from terrorists.
Not a great plan.
But oh no, their shady employer screws them over. The team gets ambushed and wiped out to the last man. And that's it. That's the plot for the Old Guard. But wait, then they come back to life and kill everyone. What the fuck? Well, it turns out that Andy and her mates are actually immortal, and they've been alive for hundreds, even thousands of years. They don't age, and if they get injured or killed in battle, they'll just regenerate, so it's basically impossible for them to die. This all sounds very familiar. Anyway, it turns out that shady government guy sold them out so he could record footage of them coming back to life and sell it to evil scientist man. Seriously dude, you've just betrayed a group of highly trained, supremely experienced immortal mercenaries that are pretty much impossible to kill and will almost certainly come after you to take revenge. How did you really imagine this was gonna play out? Nah, whatever. Naturally, evil science man wants to get his hands on Andy and her team so he can discover the secret to immortality for himself. Meanwhile, an American soldier in Afghanistan gets killed in combat and then resurrected as diverse rookie immortal. Now, this is important because new immortals don't come along all that often, and the team can apparently sense whenever a new one gets created. How? Well, because we need the rest of the plot to happen. Anyway, they soon hook up with her, and Andy explains that they have to fight until the last immortal can claim the ultimate prize. Sorry, wrong movie. They recruit her into the team and take her to a safe house in France for a nice big exposition dump. Andy explains that their immortality is on a random time limit and eventually they'll stop resurrecting, so in theory, every death could be their last. Well, I hope that doesn't turn out to be extremely relevant like 5 minutes later. And wouldn't you know it, evil science man shows up with a bunch of goons, capturing most of the team and forcing Andy to fight her way out. Naturally, some payback is in order, so she tracks down shady government guy, but oh no, one of her mates betrays her and shoots her in the fucking gut, because apparently he's tired of being immortal and thinks the evil science man can develop a cure. Fucking really? I mean, if all you want to do is die, couldn't you just jump into a volcano, or blow yourself up with a giant bomb, or walk into the turbine blades of a jet engine and have someone dump your mince into a big vat of acid? Like, I get that your body can recover from serious injuries, but there must be some kind of limit to what it can do. I'm pretty sure it's not going to bring you back from literally being vaporized. Or if you really think the evil science man can help you, then why not just split from the group and offer yourself up instead? I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to cooperate in exchange for the blood and tissue samples needed to complete his research. But nah, whatever. Apparently he'd rather betray the people he's known for literally centuries instead. What a dick. Anyway, shady government man gets a sudden attack of the SAD and decides to switch sides and help Andy and the Immortals. Their mission now is to get into evil science man's headquarters in London, rescue their friends and destroy his evil experiments once and for all. Because, you know, why should they share the secret of immortality with the rest of humanity when they can just hog it for themselves? The problem is that Andy can't do it now because her immortality has suddenly run out. Wow, talk about inconvenient timing. Probably the worst situation the group's been in for hundreds of years, and this is when her power suddenly decides to quit on her? What are the odds? Anyway, with Andy out of action, it's up to diverse rookie immortal to fight her way inside and rescue the others. You know, I love how the security teams here are still using conventional firearms to fend them off, despite going up against people that are effectively immune to bullets. Seriously, if you know for a fact that you're not going to be able to kill them, would it not make more sense to immobilize or disable them instead? I'm pretty sure that a snare gun, taser, or tranquilizer would be a better option, but hey, what do I know? So needless to say, they kill pretty much everyone with ease and make it to Evil Science Man, and then Diverse Rookie Immortal kills him by tackling him out of a fucking window. And then everyone's happy again, and they decide to work with shady government guy to make the world a better place. And that's it, that really is the plot for The Old Guard. I said before that it really warms whatever's left of my cold black heart when a movie rises above its humble origins to be more entertaining than it has any right to be. Unfortunately, the opposite is true in this case. The Old Guard is basically a bunch of promising elements that fail to coalesce into a satisfying whole, and the end result is a frustrating damp squib of a movie that never quite lives up to its potential. The general premise of a group of immortal soldiers fighting their way down the centuries is actually pretty cool, and I like the eventual revelation that their small individual acts over such a long period have ultimately had a beneficial impact on the human race. It's a neat mixture of fantasy, historical adventure, and modern day action thriller that should in theory provide a ton of opportunities to tell an interesting story. The problem is that the movie really doesn't do anything with its intriguing potential. It's like going to the world's best strip club to talk about the economic impact of Brexit. I wanted to know more about the culture and history of the Immortals, like maybe different factions and groups vying for power, with some wanting to help humanity and others aspiring to enslave it. But nope, all we get is a handful of people who work together as a mostly coherent unit for hundreds of years. Fascinating stuff. Also, there's no real sense of the timescales involved here, and apart from a short flashback sequence, the historical stuff is left pretty much unexplored. I wanted to see these guys carving their way through the Crusades, or marching across the field at Waterloo, or storming the beaches of Normandy. I wanted some kind of insight into the life they've been living, but the film's determined not to show me anything interesting. It's such a fucking waste. Highlander was smart enough to jump between Connor's early life in medieval Scotland and events in present-day New York, establishing a meaningful narrative in both time periods that ultimately tied together past and present to give you a solid understanding of the main character and the antagonist. You got to see Connor living out an entire life with the woman he loves, forced to watch her grow old and die while he lingered on. Shit man, you even got little glimpses of his life in between, helping you to understand how much he's seen and done and experienced, and the effect that such a drastically extended life has had on his personality. That's why a simple scene like this, where he opens a bottle of brandy, becomes deeply meaningful when you understand the full context behind it. All he's really doing is inhaling the scent of alcohol, but from his point of view, he's literally tasting a distant past that he's already lived through. A little fragment of an old life that suddenly comes rushing back, conjuring up memories and emotions he hasn't experienced in several lifetimes. This is what we like to call character developments. Andy feels like a fucking blank slate in comparison. Whereas Connor had slowly become cynical, world-weary and detached from society, Andy comes across as frustratingly normal and well-adjusted. The closest we get to past trauma is a flashback to her friend, or something more, who got sealed inside a metal coffin and thrown into the ocean, condemned to spend the rest of her life endlessly drowning and resurrecting. But even that's only really done to set up the sequel bait epilogue. The prospect of losing her immortality should have been the most seismic, devastating event in Andy's entire life, providing fertile ground for a talented writer to explore different facets of her character. Is she scared of dying after living so long? Is she excited at the prospect of finally having a normal life? Is she terrified of what the future holds? I don't fucking know, because the character gives nothing away. If I was a cynical man, I'd say it's because they wanted to make her look tough and stoic, rather than weighing her down with pesky emotional baggage. But by the end, I really didn't care if she lived or died, because she doesn't seem to either. The other issue is the production value. The Old Guard was made on a budget of $70 million, which is pretty lean for an A-list movie nowadays, but it should have been more than enough to cover what amounts to a standard action thriller set in modern day cities. But somehow, despite the obvious lack of ambition on display, it still manages to look cheap as fuck. It's all close-in camera angles, unimaginative shootouts and stilted dialogue scenes, usually in bland-looking office buildings and generic warehouses. It looks like a low-budget action flick from the 1990s, filmed in Canada to save money, and as a result, there's no real sense of place. It's a film that feels like it could be taking place pretty much anywhere. And it's all hammered home with amateur hour performances from a cast of nobodies, delivering clunky, cliche dialogue that feels like it was written by a 13-year-old Tumblr user penning their first screenplay.
Together we shall do such things, what they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth.
No.
He's the moon when I'm lost in darkness, and warmth when I shiver in cold, and his kiss still thrills me even after a millennia. His heart overflows with a kindness of which this world is not worthy of. I love this man beyond measure and reason. He's not my boyfriend.
I can't believe you think this is how adult human beings are supposed to talk to each other. There's nothing worse than watching a talented lead actor labouring away in a movie that totally doesn't deserve them, and I think that's the case with Charlize Theron here. She's a solid actress who's more than proven she can handle physically demanding roles, but man, the script does not give her much to work with. Watching her trying to bring Andy to life is like watching Will Smith doing everything in his power to salvage the wreck of Suicide Squad. It's a losing battle in both cases. If I had to sum up The Old Guard in one sentence, I'd say that basically this film is a waste. A waste of an interesting premise, a waste of a talented actress, a waste of a solid budget that could have financed a bunch of smaller, more inventive movies, and ultimately, a waste of 2 hours of your time. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.